The video arrived at 11:47 p.m. on a Thursday night, and by midnight, Kang Seojun understood that love could rot faster than flesh. He stood in the center of his penthouse living room, still wearing his Tom Ford tuxedo from the Metropolitan Museum Gala, watching his phone screen with the kind of stillness that preceded violence. Beside him, his twin brother Minho had gone so quiet that even his breathing seemed to have stopped. Yejun. There Yejun, the soft-spoken Omega, with paint-stained fingers and a smile that made the Empire feel like a cage they could escape. Yejun, currently on screen with another man's hands tangled in his dark hair, his back arching in pleasure that should have belonged only to them. The phone clattered to the marble floor. Seojun turned toward the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Manhattan, pressed his forehead against glass cold enough to burn. 8 months of secret meetings and stolen nights. 8 months of believing they had found something real in a world built on performance. All of it a lie. Behind him, Minho poured whiskey into crystal that cost more than most people's monthly rent and drank it in one swallow. His hands shook as he set the glass down. "Tomorrow," Minho said, his voice scraped raw. "He asked to meet us tomorrow. Said it was important." Seojun remembered the text message from this afternoon. Yejun's careful words, the nervousness evident even through digital distance. "Can we talk? I need to tell you something. Important. Whatever he wants doesn't matter now." Seojun's words fell like stones into still water. "Not after this." "Maybe the video is fake," Minho offered weakly. "Look at his face." Seojun's voice was surgical. "That's real. You know what he looks like when he's lost in sensation." The words hung between them like an execution. They had been so careful with Yejun, so patient. He was their first true mate, the first person who made their alpha instincts sing with recognition beyond just physical attraction, all while he was betraying them with someone else. "We see him tomorrow at noon," Seojun said. "We listen, then we end this cleanly." The rain fell harder against the windows, and in 12 hours their world would end for the second time in as many days. Yejun arrived at exactly noon, stepping out of the private elevator into their penthouse office with the same nervous energy that had characterized their entire relationship. He wore a vintage Hermes scarf, his nicest coat, trying to look worthy of their world. His hands trembled slightly as he clutched a manila envelope against his chest. Seojun and Minho stood behind the glass desk that had hosted 1,000 corporate executions, their faces carved from ice. The warmth that usually softened their features when Yejun entered a room was gone, replaced by the ruthless CEOs the world feared. "Thank you for seeing me." Yejun's voice was soft, hopeful, completely unaware of the devastation waiting. "I know. You're busy with the merger. This won't take long." "Sit." Minho's single word was devoid of affection. Yejun's smile faltered. He sat on the edge of the leather chair, the envelope still clutched protectively. His scent, usually sweet with contentment around them, carried notes of anxiety and something else. Something new that made both Alpha's instincts flare, with recognition they refused to acknowledge. "I've been trying to find the right words for weeks," Yejun began, his fingers whirring the envelope's edge. "I was scared, terrified actually, but I can't hide this anymore. You deserve to know." Seojun's jaw clenched. Here it comes. The confession, the apology, the explanation that would never be enough. Yejun pulled a folded paper from the envelope, his hands shaking harder now. "I'm pregnant." The words tumbled out in a rush, like he had been holding his breath. 12 weeks. I found out a month ago, but I needed time to process before telling you. I know this complicates everything with your father and the merger and Vivian, but this baby is real and I thought maybe we could figure it out together because I love you both and— Stop. Seojun's voice cut through the rambling confession like a blade. Yejun's mouth closed, confusion blooming across his features. He held out the ultrasound image with trembling fingers. "I brought proof. The doctor confirmed everything is healthy. The due date is— How long have you been sleeping with him?" Minho's question was flat, emotionless. Yejun blinked. "What?" Seojun took the ultrasound image with clinical detachment. One fetus, one tiny shape curled in grainy black and white. 12 weeks. The timeline matched when they were together. But genetics didn't lie. Kang alphas produced twins, 7 generations without exception. If this child were theirs, there would be 2. He slid the image back across the glass table like it was a contract he was rejecting. We know it's not ours, Seojun's. Words were surgical, designed to cut clean. Yejun's face went pale. What are you talking about? Of course it's yours. There's no one else. There's never been anyone else. We saw the video. Minho finally turned from the window, his eyes dead. We know what you did. We know who you really are. The confusion on Yejun's face was so complete it was almost convincing. Video? What video? I don't understand what you're talking about. Don't! Seojun's hand slammed onto the desk, making Yejun flinch. Don't insult us by pretending innocence. We saw you, 2 weeks ago, in a hotel room that wasn't ours, with a man who wasn't us. Yejun stood abruptly, the chair scraping against marble. That's not possible. I've never cheated on you. Never. There's no video because nothing happened. Your face. Minho's voice cracked on the words. Your voice. The way you said his name the same way you say ours. Don't stand there and lie when we have proof. I'm not lying, Yejun's voice rose, with panic. Show me this video, please. There's some mistake. Someone is trying to hurt us. Seojun opened his desk drawer, pulled out a check already prepared. 6 zeros printed in neat digits. He placed it on the glass table between them like a death sentence. This covers the procedure, relocation expenses, and enough for you to start over somewhere far from here. His voice was devoid of emotion. Take it. Fix this. We don't want a child that isn't ours. Yejun stared at the check like it was a snake coiled to strike. His hand moved instinctively to his stomach, protective and defiant. You think I came here for money? You think this baby is some kind of trap? What else should we think? Seojun's mask cracked slightly, revealing the devastation underneath. 1 child, not 2. Kang genetics don't allow for single births. Our father and his twin, our grandfather and his brother, 7 generations of twins without exception. If you were carrying our children, there would be 2. The math is simple. Understanding dawned on Yejun's face, followed immediately by heartbreak. So you're basing everything on genetics? On some family pattern? What about trust? What about the fact that I've never given you reason to doubt me? Except the video, Minho said quietly. There is no video. Yejun's voice broke. Or if there is, it's fake, manipulated. I don't know who would do this or why, but I'm telling you the truth. This baby is yours. Both of yours. I've never been with anyone else. Seojun stood, his heightened presence suddenly oppressive in the vast office. Take the money, Yejun. Leave New York. Start over somewhere we'll never have to see each other again. That's the kindest option I can offer. Kindest? Yejun laughed, the sound jagged and broken. You're accusing me of betrayal I didn't commit. You're rejecting a child that's yours. You're throwing money at me like I'm a problem to be solved. And you call that kind? He picked up the ultrasound. Image, folded it carefully, placed it back in the envelope. His movements were deliberate despite the tears streaming down his face. I don't want your money. I don't want anything from you except the truth you refuse to see. The truth is in the genetics, Seojun said. 1 child means 1 father, and it's not us. Yejun walked to the elevator, each step an act of survival. His hand hovered over the button, then he turned back one last time. I came here believing you loved me, believing we had something real. I was wrong about everything. The elevator doors opened. Yejun stepped inside, the check still untouched on the glass table beside the ultrasound he had left behind, like evidence they refused to see. You're going to regret this, Yejun whispered, his voice barely audible over the elevator's quiet hum. Not because I'll make you pay, but because one day you'll realize you threw away everything that mattered for a lie you chose to believe. The doors began to close. Minho took a step forward, something desperate breaking through his control. Yejun, wait! But Seojun's hand on his shoulder stopped him. The doors sealed shut. The elevator descended, carrying away the Omega, who had made them believe in love and the child they would never acknowledge. Thunder cracked outside. The check remained on the table, unclaimed. And somewhere inside both alphas, their instincts screamed that they had just made the worst mistake of their lives. They ignored it. 3 years later, Yejun learned that success tasted like revenge served cold in a crystal glass. He stood in his Soho design studio, morning light pouring through industrial windows onto the Carrara marble samples spread across his custom walnut desk. The space smelled of fresh coffee and the diptyque candles his assistant refreshed daily. Architectural Digest sat on the credenza, his face on the cover beside the headline, Hanul Atelier, the designer redefining luxury through restraint. His phone buzzed with another email from the Design Summit organizers. Confirmed keynote speaker. Private car service arranged. Presidential suite at the Greenwich Hotel. Everything meticulously planned for his return to New York, the city that had chewed him up and spit him out 3 years ago. Yejun's hand trembled slightly as he touched the screen. He had built an empire from nothing, had transformed survival into art, had become the kind of success story people whispered about in elite circles. But going back to Manhattan still felt like walking into a burning building. Appa! A small voice shattered his reflection. Taeyang burst through the studio door with the confident chaos of a 3-year-old who knew he was loved unconditionally. His dark curls bounced as he ran, his face split into a grin that made Yejun's chest ache with how much it resembled someone he was trying not to think about. Hanul took my dinosaur, and he won't give it back, and Aunt Mikyung says we have to share, but it's mine. The complaint tumbled out in one breathless rush. Behind him, Hanul appeared in the doorway, quieter and more careful, holding the disputed toy with both hands. His serious eyes assessed the situation before speaking. You left it on the floor. I thought you were done playing. Yejun crouched to their level, his Lemaire trousers creasing against Italian leather shoes that cost more than his month's rent used to be. What's the rule about sharing? We're supposed to, Taeyang admitted with a dramatic sigh that was pure theater. Even when it's hard, Hanul added softly, handing the dinosaur back to his brother. Yejun pulled them both close, breathing in the scent of baby shampoo and the strawberries they had eaten for breakfast. These two miracles. These two perfect boys who existed because he had chosen love over convenience, life over the easy lie of erasure. The memory hit without warning. He was 16 weeks pregnant, a new doctor in a coastal town 300 miles from New York. The ultrasound wand moving across his swollen belly while he stared at the ceiling and tried not to think about glass tables and checks with 6 zeros. Well, here's your first baby, the doctor had said cheerfully. And here's the second one. Twins, both developing beautifully. Yejun had gone so still, the doctor asked if he was breathing. What did you say? Twins. You're having twins. Didn't your previous doctor tell you? The previous doctor had seen one fetus at 12 weeks because the other had been hiding perfectly behind its sibling. The ultrasound Yejun had presented to Seojun and Minho had been accurate for what it showed. It just hadn't shown everything. Twins. Kang genetics. The final proof that everything they believed about his betrayal was built on sand. He had called Mikyung from the parking lot, voice shaking. There are 2 babies, 2. They were right about the genetics. They just didn't trust me enough to wait and see. Then they're fools, his aunt had said fiercely. And those babies are yours now. Only yours. The pregnancy had been brutal. His body stretched and ached under the weight of 2 lives. But Mikyung worked double shifts and came home ready to help. And Yejun enrolled in online design courses late at night when the babies kicked, teaching himself programs, building a portfolio from nothing. The twins came early at 34 weeks. Yejun remembered the terror of premature labor. Mikyung, holding his hand while he pushed and screamed and brought 2 tiny humans into the world. They were so small, but their cries were strong and indignant. What are their names? The nurse had asked. Taeyang, he touched the first baby's dark curls, and Hanul, sun and sky, light and infinite possibility. Everything their fathers had tried to erase. The first year was sleepless chaos, but Yejun's design work began getting noticed. A wealthy client commissioned him for their Napa Valley estate. The project was featured in Dwell magazine. Other clients followed. His aesthetic, restrained luxury with Korean influences, became sought after in elite circles. By the twins' second birthday, Hanul Atelier had a waiting list. Appa, are you sad? Hanel's small hand touched Yejun's face, his intuition already frighteningly accurate. No, baby, Just remembering how lucky I am to have you both. Mikyung appeared in the doorway, her practical nurse's scrubs a sharp contrast to the studio's luxury. The car service confirmed pickup at 4 a.m. tomorrow. You should sleep instead of obsessing over fabric samples. I'm not obsessing. You've reorganized that presentation 6 times. His aunt's look was knowing. It's just New York. Just a conference. It's their city, the beat wins world. What if I see them? Then you walk past them like the strangers they chose to be. Mekyung's voice was steel wrapped in warmth. You're not that scared, Omega, anymore. You're Yejun of Henol Atelier. Walk in there like you own the place. The next evening, Yejun stood in the shed at Hudson Yards, surrounded by floor-to-ceiling glass and the murmur of the design world's elite. His charcoal Jules Sounder coat hung perfectly over a simple black turtleneck. A Cartier tank watch caught the light. He looked expensive without trying, successful without announcing it. European buyers discussed his work in Italian and French. A curator from the Amen Hotel Group wanted him for their sole property. Everything he had survived for was crystallizing into this moment. Then he felt it, that familiar pull, the bond he thought he had buried. Yejun turned slowly, his heart already knowing what his mind refused to accept. Across the gallery space, standing near the entrance in matching Brioni suits that cost more than most cars, were Seojun and Minho. They looked older, harder. Success had sharpened them into something even more dangerous than before. But their faces were the same faces that had haunted his dreams and nightmares for 3 years. Their eyes met across 50 feet of polished concrete. Recognition hit Seojun first. His face drained of color, his hand gripping his brother's arm hard enough to leave marks. Yejun felt his carefully constructed walls threatening to crack. Every instinct screamed to run, to hide, to protect himself from the men who had destroyed him once already. But he had not survived 3 years alone to cower now. He held their gaze, with the cold confidence of someone who had earned his place in this room through talent and blood, and refusing to break when breaking would have been easier. Then he turned back to the Italian buyer, continuing the conversation in flawless Italian he had taught himself, dismissing the Kang twins like they were strangers. Because that's what they were. Backstage, Mikyung waited with Taeyang and Hanul. The twins were supposed to stay hidden until after Yejun's keynote speech, but Taeyang, curious and fearless, had already wandered toward the gallery opening, drawn by the crowd and lights. Seojun started walking, not toward Yejun, but toward the backstage area, where a small figure in a Bon Point coat was emerging into view. The child turned, his face catching the light. Seojun stopped breathing, dark curls, serious eyes, features that were a perfect blend of Yejun's delicate bone structure and something unmistakably Kang. Minho! His voice came out strangled. Look! Minho followed his twin's frozen stare, saw the child, then saw the second one appearing behind him, identical in every way that mattered. Twins. The world tilted sideways. Math that had seemed so certain 3 years ago rearranged itself into a truth more devastating than any lie. Yejun turned, saw where they were looking, and his face went white with a terror that had nothing to do with himself and everything to do with protecting what was his. Taeyang noticed the attention, grabbed Hanul's hand, and ran back toward Mikyung's safety. But it was too late. Seojun had seen them. Minho had seen them. And genetics didn't lie. Thunder rumbled outside the glass walls. The crowd continued chattering, unaware that 3 lives had just collided with the force of inevitability. Yejun's hands clenched into fists. His voice, when he finally found it, was barely a whisper. No. Seojun forgot how to breathe the moment he saw his own face staring back at him from a 3-year-old body. The child stood near the backstage entrance, small hand gripping an identical twin's fingers. One boy had Minho's exact curls. The other had Seojun's determined jaw. Both carried features that could only exist if Yejun had been telling the truth 3 years ago. The math rearranged itself with brutal simplicity. Twins, Kang genetics, proof walking and breathing 50 feet away. No! Minho's voice came out strangled. Yejun saw where they were looking. Terror replaced his professional calm. He moved fast, crossing the gallery to place himself between the Kangs and his children like a human shield. Mikyung! His voice cut through the crowd's murmur. Back exit, now. An older woman appeared, assessed the situation in one glance, and gathered both boys with practiced efficiency. The children went willingly, trusting her completely. One looked back, curious. His eyes met. Seojun's for a heartbeat. Then the door closed behind them. Seojun's feet moved without permission, carrying him across polished concrete toward the Omega, who had just become the center of his universe again. Don't! Yejun's command stopped him cold. Don't you dare! This wasn't the soft-spoken artist who used to whisper poetry in darkness. This version was forged steel wrapped in quiet fury. 3 years had transformed him into someone who knew exactly how much damage love could do. Those children, Seojun managed, we need to talk. We needed to talk 3 years ago when I begged you to believe me. Yejun's hands clenched. When I stood in your office terrified and you threw money at my face. We don't need to talk now. Minho circled closer, movements careful. We made a mistake. Please, just 5 minutes to explain. Explain what? Yejun's laugh cut like glass. That you destroyed me over a video you never questioned? That you rejected your children because one ultrasound didn't match your expectations? You want forgiveness now that biology proved me right? Whispers rippled through the gallery. Event staff hovered uncertainly. But Yejun ignored the audience, focused only on protecting what mattered. You have no right to look at them. Each word was deliberate. No right to know their names or faces or anything about the life I built without you. They're mine. Stay away. They're ours too. Seojun's control shattered. Our sons. Our blood. You can't deny that. Watch me. Yejun stepped closer, protective rage bleeding through his scent. Biology doesn't make you fathers. Being there at 3 a.m. when they're sick makes you a parent. Teaching them their first words, catching them when they fall. I did that alone while you signed merger contracts and forgot I existed. The weight of those lost years crashed over Seojun. First steps he never witnessed. First laughs he never heard. 3 years of moments that belonged to him and Minho, but happened in a world they had forced Yejun to build alone. We were wrong about everything, Minho's voice broke. But we can fix this. Be what they need now. Just give us a chance. A chance? Yejun's composure cracked. You've been back in my life for 5 minutes and think you deserve access to my children? You see them across a room and suddenly you've earned the right to disrupt our peace? They deserve to know their fathers, Seojun tried desperately. They deserve fathers who wanted them from the beginning. Yejun's response was immediate and devastating. Who chose them? Who trusted enough to believe? You're not those men. You're strangers who share genetics. That's all you'll ever be. He turned toward backstage where his keynote speech waited, where professional duty could drown out the bond screaming in his chest. If you come near us again, I disappear. Yejun didn't look back. I've done it once. I can do it again. No investigators, no money, no power will help. You. Test me. The threat landed absolute. Then he was gone through the same door his sons had used, leaving the twins standing in wreckage they finally understood. The gallery resumed its buzz. Staff approached with concern, but Seojun barely registered any of it. His phone appeared in his shaking hands. He typed to his head of security. Find everything. Where Yejun lives. School locations. All of it. Minho's hand stopped him before he could send. What are we doing? Seojun met his twin's eyes, seeing identical devastation reflected back. His thumb hovered over the send button. Whatever it takes to fix this. He pressed send. Thunder cracked outside. Somewhere in the building, Yejun prepared to speak to hundreds of people who had no idea the ground had just opened beneath him. And in a car pulling away from the back entrance, 2 small boys asked their aunt why the pretty men made their appa cry. Minho held them closer, her voice gentle. Sometimes people make mistakes. They can't fix babies. Sometimes all we can do is protect the ones we love from getting hurt again. Taeyong's fingers twisted in her shirt. Is Appa sad? Yes, sweetheart. Very sad. We should give him hugs when we get home, Hanel decided with the simple logic of childhood. Hugs make everything better. Minho looked out the window at the city lights blurring past, at the world that had just gotten infinitely more complicated. She thought about 2 powerful alphas who had finally realized what they destroyed. About an omega who had survived the unsurvivable and built something beautiful from ash. about twin boys who had no idea they were about to become the center of a war between past and present. "Yes, baby," she whispered. "Hugs would be good." The car disappeared into traffic. Inside the gallery, Seojun's phone buzzed with confirmation. Investigation initiated. Results within 48 hours. He stared at the screen, wondering if finding them would fix anything or just break everything worse. Minho's hand found his shoulder. "We can't force this. We can't lose them again either. We already did. 3 years ago. Now we're just living with consequences." Seojun's jaw clenched. "Then we change the consequences." Yejun delivered the best speech of his career to a room full of people while his world collapsed in slow motion. He stood on the stage at the shed, backlit by soft gallery lights, discussing sustainable luxury and the poetry of negative space, while his hands trembled against the podium. His voice remained steady, professional, carrying across the audience with the confidence of someone who had earned their place among design's elite. The presentation was flawless, the applause thunderous. 3 gallery owners approached him afterward with commission offers. None of it mattered. He smiled through the congratulations, accepted business cards with numb fingers, and escaped to his hotel suite the moment protocol allowed. The Greenwich Hotel's presidential suite was all exposed brick and carefully curated comfort, but Yejun barely saw it. He made it to the bathroom before the composure shattered completely. His phone rang. Minho's name flashed across the screen. "Are they safe?" His voice came out raw. "Asleep in my hotel room, both of them. I checked 3 times. Minho's tone was gentle. "They're asking about you. Taeyang wants to know if the pretty men made you sad." Yejun closed his eyes against the burn of tears. Pretty men. His 3-year-old son had no idea those pretty men were the ones who had tried to erase him before he was born. "I'm coming back tonight. Can you get us on the first flight out tomorrow morning?" "Already booked. 6 a.m. departure." Minho paused. "Yejun, they're going to follow you. Men like that don't just give up when they want something. Let them try." The words came out harder than he felt. "I've protected us for 3 years. I can do it again." He ended the call and stared at his reflection in the marble bathroom. The successful designer stared back, put together and professional. But underneath was the terrified Omega who remembered glass tables and checks with 6 zeros, who had survived what should have destroyed him and refused to let those men take anything else. Across the city in a different hotel, Seojun couldn't stop staring at the investigation report. The file was thorough, invasive, containing details that felt like violations, even as he consumed every word. Yejun's home address in a coastal California town, the twins' private school, his design studio's location, photographs of the house Yejun had designed himself, modern and beautiful, and everything their penthouse had never been. But it was the photos of Taeyang and Hanul that Seojun couldn't look away from. Candid shots from public events, the boys dressed carefully, their faces bright with joy. One showed them at a beach cleanup, small hands collecting trash. Another captured them at what looked like a school performance, holding hands and singing. 3 years of life happening without them. Minho sat across the hotel room, his own phone displaying the same report, but his face carried guilt instead of hunger. "This feels wrong. We're stalking them." "We're gathering information," Seojun corrected, though the words tasted like the lie they were. "No. We're invading their privacy because we're too entitled to accept that we have no rights here." Minho set his phone down like it burned. "Look at these photos, Seojun. Really look. Those boys are happy, loved. They have a life that works without us. Who are we to destroy that? We're their fathers. Are we?" Minho's question was quiet and devastating. "Fathers show up. Fathers choose their children. We chose a video over Yejun's word. We chose our empire over their existence. Biology doesn't make us fathers. It just makes us related." Seojun's jaw clenched. He stood and walked to the window, looking out at Manhattan glittering with other people's lives. "So we just walk away? Pretend we never saw them? Live with knowing our children exist and we chose to stay strangers?" "I don't know." Minho's honesty was raw. "But I know showing up in California, unannounced, makes us predators, not parents. I know using our resources to track them is harassment, not love. And I know that every step we take closer to them pushes Yejun further into protective mode." "Then what do you suggest?" Seojun turned, his face carved with desperation. We send a letter? Make an appointment through lawyers? Wait patiently while our sons grow up thinking we didn't want them? They already think that, because it was true 3 years ago. Minho stood, crossing to his twin. We can't rewrite history. We can't undo the damage. Maybe the best thing we can do is let Yejun decide if and when we get access. Respect his boundaries instead of trampling them. I can't. The admission cost Seojun something. I saw them for 30 seconds and I can't walk away. I know it's selfish. I know it makes me the villain. But those are my sons and I need to know them. Even if knowing us hurts them? The question hung between them, unanswerable and heavy. Seojun's phone buzzed. Their head of security. I found something about the video. You need to see this immediately. He showed Minho the message. For a moment, neither spoke. The video. Minho's voice was barely audible. 3 years and we never questioned who sent it or why. We were too busy being heartbroken to think clearly. Seojun pulled up his contacts, calling their security chief. Send everything you found, now. The file arrived within minutes. A digital trail leading back to the anonymous message from 3 years ago. IP addresses traced through multiple proxies. Financial transactions buried in offshore accounts. And a name that made Seojun's blood go cold. No, he stared at the screen. That's not possible. Minho looked over his shoulder, reading the name, his face draining of color. Why would she do this? The answer was in the attached evidence. Emails discussing the merger with Ashford Banking. Messages about removing obstacles to the engagement. Receipts for a private investigator and a hired actor. Photos time-stamped 2 weeks before the video arrived. Vivian Ashford had orchestrated everything. The video was fake, staged, designed to destroy their relationship with Yejun before he could become a permanent complication. And they had believed it without question, had thrown away their mate and their children because someone manipulated them perfectly. We destroyed everything over a lie. Seojun's hands shook. We accused Yejun of betrayal when he was the only one being honest. And now he's in California trying to escape us because we proved we can't be trusted. Minho's voice broke. What do we do? Seojun was already pulling up flight information. We go there. We tell him the truth about the video. We show him this evidence and prove that we were manipulated. And you think that fixes 3 years of abandonment? Minho grabbed his arm. You think showing him we were victims too erases what we did? We still rejected him. We still threw money at him. We still chose not to believe. So we just accept this? Live with knowing Vivian destroyed our family and got away with it? No. We expose her. We make sure everyone knows what she did. But we don't use it as an excuse to force ourselves into Yejun's life. Minho's grip tightened. We were manipulated, yes, but we still made our own choices. We own that before we ask for anything. Seojun stared at his twin, seeing the wisdom in his words but unable to accept them. His sons were 300 miles away. His mate was running from him, and every instinct screamed to chase, to claim, to fix what was broken regardless of cost. His phone was already open to flight bookings. Minho saw it and closed his eyes in resignation. If we do this, we do it right. No ambushing him. No showing up at his house. We reach out through proper channels first. And if he refuses to see us, then we respect that. Because that's what parents do. They put their children's needs above their own wants. Seojun's finger hovered over the purchase button. Tomorrow morning, first flight to California. The beginning of either healing or more devastation. He pressed confirm. Vivian Ashford Kang stood in the penthouse doorway, like a queen surveying a rebellion she intended to crush. She was immaculate as always. Chanel suit pressed to perfection, hair swept into a chignon that probably cost more than most people's mortgages. Her heels clicked against marble as she entered the space she had occupied for 2.5 years of a marriage built on contracts instead of vows. Seojun looked up from the suitcase he was packing, his hands freezing mid-motion. Minho emerged from his bedroom, overnight bag in hand, his expression shifting to cold wariness. Going somewhere? Vivian's voice was pleasant, conversational, like she was asking about weekend plans instead of watching her husbands prepare to leave her. California. Seojun's answer was flat, no explanation offered. For those children. She moved to the bar, poured herself whiskey she didn't drink, just held like a prop. The ones you saw at the design conference. The ones that suddenly matter. After 3 years of convenient ignorance, Minho's jaw tightened. How did you know about that? I know everything about you both. That was the agreement when we married. Vivian smiled, cold and sharp. I monitor your credit cards, your schedules, your communications. Did you really think booking last-minute flights to a coastal town wouldn't trigger alerts? You've been spying on us. Seojun's voice dropped to something dangerous. I've been protecting my investment. She set the glass down untouched. Just like I did 3 years ago, when that Omega threatened everything we built. The admission landed like a bomb in the silent room. Minho spoke first, his tone eerily calm. The video. You sent it. I commissioned it. Vivian's correction was casual, like she was discussing interior design choices. Hired a very talented actor. Staged the whole thing in a hotel room I rented specifically for the purpose. The editing was seamless. Even I was impressed. Seojun moved. Toward her, every muscle coiled with violence, barely restrained. You destroyed our family over a business arrangement. I secured our future. Vivian didn't flinch. That Omega had no connections, no value, nothing to offer except disruption to a merger worth billions. He was a liability. I removed him. He was pregnant with our children. Minho's words were quiet and devastating. Yes, well, genetics are inconvenient sometimes. Vivian inspected her manicure. I assumed the money would solve that problem. I didn't anticipate he'd be sentimental enough to keep them. The casual cruelty of it was breathtaking. Seojun lunged. Minho caught him, holding his twin back with strength that came from desperation rather than restraint. We're divorcing you. Seojun's voice shook with rage. Today. Right now. I don't care what it costs. Vivian laughed. The sound was genuine amusement mixed with pity. Oh, darling, you really think it's that simple? She pulled out her phone, opened a document, turned the screen toward them. The merger contract filled the display, highlighted sections glowing in accusatory yellow. Clause 47. Her manicured nail tapped the glass. If this marriage dissolves within 5 years of execution, Ashford Banking retains the right to withdraw all investments, partnerships, and collaborative ventures with Kang Industries. Your father negotiated this himself, insurance against either family backing out too quickly. Minho scanned the clause, his face going pale. That would collapse half our ventures. 3/4, actually. I did the math. Vivian's smile was predatory. Billions in losses, thousands of jobs gone, your father's legacy destroyed. All because you want to play house with some Omega and his children. Our children, Seojun corrected through clenched teeth. Genetically, perhaps. Legally, emotionally, practically, they're his. You made that choice 3 years ago. She moved closer, her scent, deliberately neutral, giving them nothing. Here's what happens if you divorce me. First, the financial devastation. Second, I go public with a very different story. Scorned wife abandoned for secret lover. 2 innocent children dragged into scandal by selfish fathers who only notice them when convenient. I have publicists, journalists, an entire media apparatus that will bury all of you. We'll tell them what you did. Minho's voice was steel. With what proof? Vivian's eyebrow arched. The video's metadata was scrubbed. The payments went through accounts that no longer exist. The actor disappeared back to whatever hole I found him in. It's my word against yours. And I'm the sympathetic wife, remember? You're the powerful alphas trying to rewrite history. The trap was perfect, airtight, designed by someone who understood exactly how to weaponize power and perception. Seojun stared at this woman he had married, seeing her clearly for the first time. Not a convenient arrangement, but a monster wearing expensive clothes and perfect makeup. Someone capable of destroying lives without remorse if it served her interests. Do it. The words came out before he fully decided to say them. Vivian blinked. Excuse me? Pull the merger. Collapse the company. Destroy our reputation. Seojun's voice gained strength with each word. We don't care anymore. We chose wrong 3 years ago because we were cowards who valued empire over truth. We're not choosing wrong again. Minho looked at his twin, seeing the same desperate determination reflected back. They had lost everything that mattered once. Losing money and status and their father's legacy seemed like nothing compared to losing their sons a second time. You're bluffing, Vivian said, but uncertainty crept into her tone. File whatever you want, say whatever you need. Minho moved to stand beside Seojun, united. We're leaving, today, and you can do your worst. Vivian's face twisted, the Jurium mask of civility cracking to reveal genuine rage underneath. You'll regret this. Both of you. Her phone was already in her hand, fingers flying across the screen with practiced efficiency. I made contingency plans, of course. Insurance against this exact scenario. She turned the screen toward them. A gossip article loading in real time. Photos appearing as it published. Yejun's face from the conference. The twins in their suits. And worst of all, slightly blurred but unmistakable images of two small boys. The headline screamed across the top, Kang Air's secret children exposed. The Omega who destroyed a dynasty. By the time you land in California, his face will be everywhere. Vivian's voice was poison. His business buried in scandal. Those children's privacy destroyed. You think you're protecting them? You just painted targets on their backs the moment you decided to chase redemption. Seojun's phone rang. He looked at the screen. Yejun's name flashed across it. His hand shook as he answered. Yejun, I can explain. What did you do? Yejun's voice was shaking with terror and rage. My son's faces are on the internet. Reporters are calling my studio. Parents at their school are sending me screenshots. What did you do? The line went dead. Seojun stared at the phone, then at Vivian, then at the article spreading across social media like wildfire. Everything they had tried to protect was burning. The children they wanted to know were being exposed. The Omega they needed to earn back would never forgive them now. Vivian smiled, victorious and vicious. Welcome to consequences, gentlemen. I hope your sons were worth destroying everything for. She walked toward the door, paused at the threshold. The divorce papers will be on your desk by morning, along with the merger withdrawal notice. Enjoy California. The door closed behind her with a click that sounded like a cell locking. Minho's phone buzzed, then Seojun's. Then both at once. Messages flooding in. News alerts. Media requests. Their carefully controlled world imploding in real time. We have to get to them. Seojun was already moving. Before this gets worse. It can't get worse, Minho said quietly, staring at his phone where Yejun's contact photo smiled up at him, taken 3 years ago when they were still happy. We just destroyed them again. Yejun's world ended not with a bang, but with the sound of his phone ringing nonstop at 4 in the morning. He jerked awake in the hotel room where he'd fled after the article dropped, his hand fumbling for the device vibrating across the nightstand. 23 missed calls, 47 text messages. His email inbox showed 300 unread notifications, all from the past 6 hours. The first message he opened was from a client. Contract termination effective immediately. Concerns about brand association. Apologies for the inconvenience. The second was from another client. Same message, different wording. By the fifth, Yejun stopped reading. He pulled up the article that had detonated his existence. The photos were clear despite attempts at blurring. Taeyang's bright smile captured at a school event. Hanul's serious face from a beach cleanup fundraiser. Both of them identifiable. Both of them now public property for strangers to dissect and discuss. His sons, his babies. Exposed because two alphas couldn't leave well enough alone. The phone rang again. The twins' school. Yejun answered with shaking hands. Mr. Yejun, I'm so sorry to call this early. The director's voice carried professional concern, layered with something else. Fear. We've had several reporters attempt to enter campus this morning. Parents are expressing security concerns. We need to discuss whether it's safe for Taeyang and Hanul to attend until this situation resolves. Safe. The word tasted like ash. His children weren't safe anywhere now. Not at school, not at home, not in the life he had built from nothing to protect them from exactly this kind of exposure. I'll handle it, Yejun managed before ending the call. He sat on the edge of the hotel bed, head in his hands trying to breathe through the panic clawing up his throat. 3 years. 3 years of careful privacy, of building success without spectacle, of giving his sons a normal childhood despite their biology, destroyed in hours because Seojun and Minho decided their guilt mattered more than anyone else's peace. His phone buzzed with another call. Mikyung. I'm taking the boys to Sumi's place inland, she said without preamble. Somewhere the cameras can't find them. Pack a bag and meet us there when you can. I can't run again, Yejun's voice broke. I built a life here. I have clients, contracts, a home. Had. Mikyung's correction was gentle but firm. Past tense, baby. That life is gone the moment those photos published. Now we protect the boys. Everything else is secondary. She was right. She was always right. Yejun ended the call and started packing with mechanical efficiency, his mind numb to everything except the need to get his children somewhere safe. Across the country in a plane descending toward California, Seojun stared at his phone with growing horror. The article had metastasized overnight. What started as one gossip piece had spawned dozens of copycat stories, each adding their own speculation and invented details. Some called Yejun a homewrecker. Others painted him as a victim. A few had already identified the twins' school, their neighborhood, Yejun's studio address. Everything was public now. Every carefully guarded detail of the life Yejun had built was being picked apart by strangers who thought they had a right to know. We did this, Minho said quietly from the seat beside him. Vivienne pulled the trigger, but we loaded the gun by coming here, by not thinking about what would happen when people connected the dots. Seojun wanted to argue, wanted to say they were trying to fix a wrong, that their intentions mattered. But intentions meant nothing when the result was devastation. The plane touched down to chaos. Paparazzi had somehow learned their flight information. Cameras flashed as they exited the terminal. Questions shouted from every direction about the Omega, the children, the scandal that was currently trending, across 3 platforms. Their rental car was mobbed before they reached it. Security had to intervene. By the time they escaped the airport, Seojun's hands were shaking on the wheel. They drove to Yejun's address in silence. The house was beautiful, even in distress. Modern lines and careful design visible despite the closed curtains and dark windows. But it was also clearly empty. No cars in the driveway. No signs of life. A neighbor emerged from the house next door, her expression hostile. He's gone. Took off this morning with his aunt and those poor babies. And if you two have any decency left, you'll leave him alone instead of making this worse. We're trying to help, Seojun started. By dragging his children into your mess? The woman's voice was sharp. By letting the whole world see their faces? Some help. Get off this street before I call the police. They left. What else could they do? Seojun's phone buzzed. A message from Yejun, sent to both of them. I warned you. What would happen if you invaded our lives? Now my sons' faces are everywhere. Strangers know their names. Their school is under siege. You did this, not Vivian. You, because you couldn't leave us alone. Stay away. The words hit like physical blows. Minho made a sound that might have been a sob. Seojun just stared at the screen, rereading the message until the letters blurred. We should go home, Minho said. We've done enough damage. We can't leave them like this. Seojun's voice was hollow. We have to fix what we broke. How? Tell me how we fix this without making it worse. Seojun had no answer. They ended up at a small store on the edge of town, trying to figure out their next move. That's where Mikyung found them. Or rather, where she appeared like an avenging angel in practical scrubs, her expression colder than winter. You have 30 seconds before I call the police. Her voice was controlled fury. Use them wisely. Please. Minho stepped forward, hands raised in surrender. We know we made this worse. We know we should have stayed away. But there has to be something we can do now to protect them. Tell us how to fix this. You want to fix this? Mikyung's laugh was bitter. Make a public statement. Deny everything. Call those children a lie, a mistake, something the media invented. Give Yejun and the boys their anonymity back, even if it destroys your reputation. The impossible choice crystallized between them. Deny their sons to save them. Reject them publicly to protect them privately. Seojun and Minho stared at each other, both seeing the same devastating truth reflected back. Love sometimes meant sacrifice. Sometimes it meant walking away. Sometimes it meant choosing your children's well-being over your own desperate need to know them. Before either could speak, Mikyung's phone rang. Her face drained of color as she answered. The grocery bag she was holding dropped, contents scattering across pavement. What hospital? Her voice shook. She looked up at the twins, and fear replaced fury in her eyes. Someone followed Yejun. He tried to lose them. There was an accident. They're taking him to the hospital. She was already running for her car. The twins chased after her, horror replacing everything else. Yejun looked like death painted in hospital white, and the sight of him broke something fundamental in Seojun and Minho that would never heal the same way. The emergency room doctor had used clinical words like stable and fortunate and full recovery expected. But those words meant nothing when Yejun lay unconscious behind glass with machines monitoring his breathing and IV lines snaking into bruised arms. His face was a canvas of damage. Split lip, swollen eye, a bandage wrapped around his head where he'd hit the windshield despite the airbag. All of it because someone with a camera had chased him through traffic like he was prey instead of a person. Mikyung sat in the surgical waiting room with her spine rigid and her hands clenched in her lap. She hadn't spoken to Seojun or Minho since arriving at the hospital 3 steps ahead of them. Hadn't acknowledged their presence, just sat there radiating fury and fear in equal measure. Other people in the waiting room kept glancing their way. Recognition flickered across faces. The scandal was fresh enough that everyone knew who the Kang twins were and what they'd done. Seojun felt their judgment like physical weight. He deserved every bit of it. A surgeon emerged after 2 hours that felt like decades. Family for Yejun? Mikyung stood immediately. I'm his aunt. The surgery went well. 3 broken ribs, moderate concussion, internal bruising, but no organ damage. He was very lucky. The doctor's tone suggested luck was relative when you were fleeing paparazzi. He'll need several weeks of recovery. We're moving him to a room shortly. Immediate family only for now. Mikyung nodded and followed the surgeon without a backward glance at the twins. They were left alone in chairs that were too small and a silence that was too large. Minho spoke first, his voice wrecked. We should leave. We have no right to be here. I can't. Seojun stared at the double doors Mikyung had disappeared through. Not until I know he's really okay. He'll never be okay because of us. Minho's hands covered his face. We destroyed him twice. The first time with rejection, this time with exposure. How do we live with that? Seojun had no answer. He just sat there while hours crawled past and other families came and went, and the fluorescent lights buzzed overhead like insects. Finally, he stood. I need to do something. Anything. He walked to the parking lot and pulled out his phone. His hands shook as he opened the camera, positioned himself against the side of the building, and pressed record. My name is Kang Seojun. 3 years ago, my brother Minho and I made the worst mistake of our lives. His voice was steady despite everything breaking inside. We rejected our mate when he told us he was pregnant. We accused him of betrayal based on manipulated evidence we never questioned. We threw money at him like he was a problem instead of a person we claimed to love. The words came easier now, truth, cutting through performance. The children in those photos are ours. Taeyang and Hanoul, 3 years old, beautiful and innocent, and they deserve privacy we failed to protect. This scandal is our fault, not their father's, not theirs, ours. He looked directly into the camera. Yejun built a life for our sons when we abandoned them. He gave them everything we should have provided, and today he's in the hospital because our actions put a target on his back. Seojun's voice cracked. We're stepping back, completely. We won't pursue custody or contact. We're asking the media to leave them alone. They deserve peace. Please just let them have peace. He ended the recording and posted it immediately across every platform before he could second-guess the decision. Within an hour, the video had 500,000 views. Minho found him still in the parking lot, staring at the notifications flooding his phone. What did you do? Seojun showed him the video. Minho watched it twice, then pulled out his own phone and recorded a nearly identical statement, posted it with shaking hands. We're also proceeding with divorce from Vivian Ashford, regardless of financial consequences, Minho added in his version. What she did was unforgivable. What we did afterward was worse. The public response was immediate and chaotic. Some people praised their accountability. Others called it too little too late. Vivian's lawyers sent cease and desist letters within the hour. The Kang Industries board demanded emergency meetings. None of it mattered compared to the man lying in a hospital bed because of them. They returned to the waiting room, sat in the same uncomfortable chairs, waited for news they had no right to hear. Minho emerged hours later, her face exhausted. She looked at them like they were particularly persistent stains she couldn't scrub away. He's awake, stable, asking about the boys. She paused. He knows you're here. Wants you gone. Can we see him? Seojun's question was barely audible. Just to know he's really okay? You've seen enough. Done enough. Minhyung's voice was ice. Go back to New York. Sign whatever papers protect those children legally. Then disappear from their lives like you should have done 3 years ago. Please. Minho stood, his usual composure completely shattered. 5 minutes. Just so he knows we're sorry. That we'll do whatever he needs. Minhyung studied them both, saw something in their devastation that made her shoulders drop slightly. I'll ask, but if he says no, you leave this hospital and this town and you don't come back. Understood? They nodded. She disappeared through the doors again, returned 10 minutes later. 5 minutes. I stay in the room. You don't touch him. You don't make promises you can't keep. And when he tells you to leave, you leave. The hospital room was too bright and too quiet. Seojun looked smaller in the bed, fragile in ways that seemed impossible for someone who had survived so much. His eyes tracked them as they entered, and the hatred there was like a physical blow. I don't want your apologies, he said before either could speak. His voice was rough, damaged. I want you to leave California and never come back. We will, Seojun's response was immediate. Whatever you need. We just wanted to see you were alive. Well, I am. Congratulations. You didn't actually kill me this time. Yeojun's bitter laugh turned into a wince of pain. Just destroyed my business and traumatized my children and made me a spectacle for millions of strangers. But I'm breathing. Happy? Minho stepped forward and Minhyung's hand immediately went to stop him. He froze. The video that started everything 3 years ago was fake. The words tumbled out desperate and raw. Vivian admitted she staged it, hired an actor, manipulated us into rejecting you. We're not telling you this as an excuse. You deserve to know the truth. Yeojun stared at him. Something shifted behind his eyes. Not forgiveness, just a crack in the certainty. That doesn't change what you did. You still chose not to believe me. You still threw money at me. You still rejected our children based on one ultrasound and your family genetics. His hands clenched in the hospital sheets. So Vivian gave you a reason to doubt. You still made the choice. You're right. Seojun's voice was hollow. We failed you in every way that mattered, and we'll spend the rest of our lives knowing we destroyed the only real thing we ever had. Good. Yeojun closed his eyes, exhaustion bleeding through the anger. Now get out. I'm tired and everything hurts, and I can't do this right now. They left without argument, walked out of the room and through the waiting area and into the parking lot where their rental car sat like an escape vehicle they didn't deserve. We should go home, Minho said again. Not yet. Seojun pulled out his phone, started making calls. We fix what we can. First, security for the boys' school, legal protection from the media, whatever practical help we can provide without asking for anything in return. He won't thank us. I know, but we do it anyway. They spent the next 3 days working silently, hired security, paid legal fees, had Yeojun's vandalized studio windows replaced, set up trust for the twins' education. Every action taken quietly, without announcement, without expectation of gratitude. On the 4th day, Yeojun was released from the hospital. Minhyung drove him home to find his life slightly less destroyed than when he'd left it. His phone buzzed with a message. We're not asking for forgiveness. We're not demanding access. We just want to help however you'll allow. The boys' school has security now. Your studio is repaired. Legal fees are handled. We're not trying to buy you. We're trying to prove we can do the right thing even when you'll never thank us for it. Yejun stared at the message. His finger hovered over delete. He didn't press it. 2 weeks after the accident, Taeyang asked the question Yejun had been dreading since the scandal broke. Appa, who are the pretty men in the pictures? Yejun froze mid-motion, the breakfast plate in his hand, hovering over the table. His ribs still ached when he moved too quickly, a constant reminder of how badly everything had shattered. Across from him, Hanul watched with those serious eyes that missed nothing, waiting for an answer his brother had been brave enough to ask. They'd seen the photos. Of course they had. Mikyung had tried to keep screens away from them, but 3-year-olds were curious and the world was full of devices. Someone at school had probably shown them. Or maybe they'd glimpsed a tablet left unattended. Either way, the truth was unavoidable now. They're alphas who help make you, Yejun said carefully, setting the plate down and sitting so he could meet their eyes at their level. A long time ago, before you were born. Like daddies? Taeyang's face lit with recognition. Seojun at school has 2 daddies. Are they our daddies? The word felt like a knife between Yejun's ribs. It's complicated, baby. Why don't they live with us? Hanul's question was quieter, more cautious. Did we do something wrong? No. Yejun pulled them both close, ignoring the pain in his chest. You did nothing wrong. You're perfect. This is grown-up stuff that happened before you were born. It's not your fault. But the questions didn't stop. They multiplied over the following days. Why were their faces on the internet? Why did the pretty men look sad in the pictures? Could they meet them? Did the pretty men know their names? Yejun answered what he could and deflected what he couldn't. But exhaustion was setting in. Physical healing took energy. Emotional warfare took more. Mikyung found him one evening after the boys were asleep, staring at his phone with the kind of intensity that meant he was avoiding a decision. They're still here, she said without preamble. The twins. Been in town for 2 weeks. Haven't approached once. Just quietly fixing things and waiting. Waiting for what? For you to decide if those boys deserve to know their fathers. She sat beside him on the couch. I'm not saying forgive them. I'm not even saying trust them. But Taeyang and Hanul are asking questions you can't answer without bias. Maybe it's time to let them form their own opinions. They're 3 years old. They can't form opinions about complex adult betrayal. No, but they can meet 2 alphas who share their DNA and see if those men treat them with kindness. Mikyung's voice was gentle but firm. You're holding on to rage because it's easier than risking more pain. I understand that. But is it fair to the boys? The question sat heavy in the silence. Yejun thought about Taeyang's drawings lately, families with 5 stick figures instead of 3. About Hanul asking why some kids had daddies and they didn't. About the curiosity in their faces when they saw Seojun and Minho's photos. His sons deserved more than his unresolved trauma. Supervised visits, he said finally. 1 hour. Neutral location. The second they make the boys uncomfortable, it ends permanently. Mikyung squeezed his hand. That's fair. Writing the letter took 3 days. Yejun drafted and deleted and rewrote until the words were stripped of emotion and left only with boundaries. The response came within an hour of sending. Agreement to every condition. Gratitude that felt genuine through the digital distance. A request for when and where that held no demands, only deference to Yejun's control. Saturday morning, the park near the beach, 10 a.m. Yejun told the boys the night before, keeping it simple. The alphas who help make you want to meet you. Would you like that? Taeyang's enthusiastic yes contrasted with Hanul's nervous nod. Both reactions were valid. Both terrified Yejun in different ways. Saturday arrived too. Quickly, Yejun dressed the boys in their favorite clothes, let them bring comfort items. Taeyang chose his favorite dinosaur. Hanul grabbed the sketchbook he carried everywhere. The park was quiet at this hour. Seojun and Minho were already there, sitting on a bench near the playground like they were waiting for execution instead of introduction. They stood when Yejun's car pulled into the lot, then immediately sat back down as if worried their height would be intimidating. Yejun's hands tightened on the steering wheel. Mikyung touched his shoulder from the passenger seat. You don't have to do this, she said quietly. Yes, I do. He got out first, helped the boys from their car seats. Taeyang ran ahead immediately, fearless as always. Hanul gripped Yejun's hand, taking in these strangers with careful assessment. Seojun and Minho looked different than Yejun remembered. Older, more worn. Their expensive clothes were gone, replaced with simple jeans and plain shirts. No watches, no obvious wealth. Just two alphas trying very hard not to look threatening. Hi, Taeyang announced, stopping 3 feet away with his dinosaur clutched to his chest. I'm Taeyang. This is my brother Hanul. Are you our daddies? Seojin's face crumpled before he controlled it. We'd like to be, if that's okay with you. What are your names? Taeyang demanded. I'm Seojun. This is my brother Minho. You're twins like us. Taeyang's discovery was delighted. Do you have the same birthday too? We do. Minho's voice was careful, gentle. Do you? Yeah. Appa says we came out together. I was first though. Taeyang said it with pride. Hanul hadn't moved from behind Yejun's legs. Minho noticed and crouched lower, making himself smaller. Hi, Hanul. That's a nice sketchbook. Do you like to draw? A tiny nod. What do you draw? Dinosaurs mostly. Hanul's voice was barely audible. And the ocean. Those sound beautiful. Maybe you could show me sometime, if you want to. Another nod, slightly less hesitant. The hour unfolded in careful increments. Taeyang asked 100 questions with the fearlessness of a child who'd never learned to distrust. What was their favorite color? Did they like dinosaurs? Could they do cartwheels? Had they ever seen a whale? Seojun and Minho answered everything with patience that seemed infinite. They learned about the boys' favorite foods, their teachers' names, the song Taeyang sang in music class. Small details that shouldn't have meant everything, but clearly did. Yejun watched from a bench 20 feet away with Mikyung beside him. He saw Seojun's face when Taeyang laughed, genuine joy mixed with grief for all the laughs he'd missed. He saw Minho's careful attention to Hanul's quiet observations, respecting the child's need for space while staying engaged. They weren't performing, they were present. The realization cracked something in Yejun's carefully maintained armor. When the hour ended, Taeyang protested loudly. But we didn't finish talking about space yet. We can talk more next time, Minho said gently, if your appa says it's okay. Both boys looked at Yejun with hope written across their faces. We'll see, he managed. Seojun and Minho stood, keeping distance, directing their words to Yejun for the first time. Thank you. For this. For giving us a chance we don't deserve. Yejun nodded once, grabbed his son's hands and walked back to the car, before anyone could see his composure fracturing. That night, Hanul climbed into bed beside him and whispered against his shoulder. Appa, why did the daddies look so sad when we had to go? Yejun had no answer, just pulled his son closer and hoped that was enough. His phone buzzed on the nightstand. A message from Seojun. Thank you. For today. For giving us a chance we don't deserve. We know 1 hour doesn't fix 3 years, but it's a start we'll spend our lives being worthy of. Yejun read it 3 times, started typing a response, then deleted it. Tried again with different words. Deleted those too. Finally settled on something simple. Same time next week, if the boys want to. The response came immediately. They won't regret it. We promise. Yejun stared at the word promise, remembering every promise that had been broken before. His finger hovered over the power button. He didn't turn the phone off. 6 weeks of supervised visits taught Yejun that forgiveness could arrive in small moments instead of grand revelations. It came when Seojun learned all the words to Taeyang's favorite dinosaur song and sang it without embarrassment at the park. When Minho sat quietly beside Hanul for 20 minutes while the boy drew, offering gentle commentary, but never rushing the silence. When both twins showed up in the rain for their scheduled visit, even though Yejun had texted that they could reschedule, the boys started calling them Daddy Seojun and Daddy Minho, without prompting. Yejun's chest ached every time he heard it. Grief and joy tangled so completely he couldn't separate them. Then Taeyang asked the question that changed everything. Appa, why can't the daddies come to our house? Sujin's daddies live together. Why don't we all live together? Yejun had frozen, searching for an answer that was honest but age-appropriate. It's complicated, baby. You always say that. Taeyang's frustration was pure 3-year-old logic. But you smile at Aunt Mikyung. You don't smile at the daddies. Don't you like them? The accusation landed hard because it wasn't quite true anymore. Yejun did like them, or was starting to, or had never stopped, and was just now admitting it. That night, his phone buzzed with a message from Seojun. I know this is presumptuous. Feel free to say no, but Minho and I would like to take you to dinner. Just the three of us. We finalized the divorce from Vivian today. We'd like to tell you about it properly. No pressure, no expectations, just conversation. Yejun stared at the message for 15 minutes. His finger hovered over the decline button multiple times. But something had shifted in the past weeks. Watching Seojun and Minho with the boys had cracked the armor he'd built from their betrayal. They weren't performing anymore. They were present, consistent, real. He typed a response before he could overthink it. Where and when? The restaurant Seojun chose was quiet and intimate without being ostentatious. Warm lighting, exposed brick, tables spaced far enough apart that conversation stayed private. Yejun arrived 5 minutes early and immediately regretted agreeing to this. Then Seojun and Minho walked in, and something in Yejun's chest tightened painfully. They looked different than they had 6 weeks ago. Less polished, more human. Seojun's hair was slightly too long, like he'd forgotten to schedule a haircut. Minho wore a sweater instead of a suit, the kind of casual clothing that suggested comfort over impression. They saw him and their faces transformed. Relief, joy, nervousness that mirrored his own. You came, Seojun said as they sat, like he'd genuinely worried Yejun would change his mind. I said I would. You've said that before and we disappointed you. Minho's honesty was quiet. We wouldn't have blamed you for running. The server appeared, took drink orders, disappeared. Silence stretched awkward and heavy until Yejun broke it. How are the boys really? When I'm not watching? Relief flickered across both their faces. Safe territory. Shared ground. Tai Yang asked me yesterday if alphas can do cartwheels, Seojun said, then insisted I prove it. I haven't attempted a cartwheel in 20 years. It was humbling. Hanul told me he wants to be an artist when he grows up. Minho's voice carried wonder. He drew me a picture of the ocean. I have it on my refrigerator. He draws the ocean constantly, Yejun admitted. I think it makes him feel calm. The conversation flowed easier after that. Stories about the boys, shared observations, laughter that felt dangerously close to what they'd had 3 years ago. Yejun felt his walls lowering incrementally, brick by careful brick. We finalized the divorce yesterday, Seojun said when their meals arrived. Vivian took her settlement. The merger with Ashford Banking collapsed. Kang Industries lost. Billions in valuation. And you're okay with that? Yejun asked carefully. We're more than okay. Minho's response was immediate. We restructured everything, stepped back from the board, started a smaller venture focused on ethical investments. It's not the empire our father built, but it's ours, and it doesn't require sacrificing what actually matters. Which is? You. Seojun's answer was simple and devastating. The boys. A life that's real instead of performed. We can't undo 3 years. We can't erase the pain we caused. But we can choose differently now. We are choosing differently. Yejun's throat tightened. He wanted to believe them, wanted to trust that change was permanent instead of temporary performance. But trust was a cliff he wasn't sure he could jump from again. I'm terrified, he admitted, of letting you in again, of believing this is real and discovering it's not, of my sons getting attached and you deciding fatherhood is harder than you thought. We're terrified too, Minho leaned forward, of not being enough, of failing you again, of losing you before we really get you back. But we're here anyway. We'll keep being here, for as long as you'll allow. Seojun's hand moved across the table, hovering near Yejun's without touching. A question, an offer, a promise wrapped in hesitation. Yejun's hand started to move toward it. Then he saw her. Vivian stood at the restaurant entrance, dressed in winter white that made her look like an ice sculpture come to life. Her eyes found them immediately, locked onto Yejun with the kind of focus that made his blood run cold. She smiled, not angry, not surprised, just knowing and satisfied and terrifying in its calm certainty. She didn't approach, didn't speak, just walked to the bar, ordered wine, and raised her glass toward their table in a mock toast that felt like a threat. Seojun and Minho turned, saw her, and both stood immediately, their bodies positioned between Yejun and Vivian, protective and fierce. "Stay here," Seojun said. "Don't!" Yejun grabbed his wrist. "She wants a reaction. Don't give it to her." Vivian finished her wine slowly, deliberately. Then she stood, smoothed her dress, and walked toward the exit. She paused at their table, her smile never wavering. "Lovely evening for reconciliation," she said pleasantly. "I hope it lasts." Then she was gone, leaving behind the scent of expensive perfume and the promise of destruction. The intimacy of the dinner shattered like glass. Yejun pulled his hand back, the moment broken, reality crashing back in waves. "She's not going to stop," he said quietly. "Is she? We'll handle her." Minho's voice was steel. "Whatever it takes, she won't touch you or the boys." "You can't promise that." Yejun stood, needing distance, needing air. "She's already proven she can destroy us without getting her hands dirty. What's to stop her from doing it again?" "We are." Seojun moved closer but didn't touch. "We know what she is now. We're prepared. We'll protect you." "Like you protected me 3 years ago?" The words came out harsher than intended, but Yejun couldn't pull them back. The twins flinched. The wound was still too fresh to not bleed when pressed. "Let us drive you home," Minho tried. "Please, don't leave like this." "I need to think." Yejun was already moving toward the exit. "About whether trusting you means painting a target on my son's backs. About whether any of this is worth the risk." He left them standing in the restaurant, walked out into cold night air that shocked his lungs. His car was 3 blocks away. He'd parked far on purpose, wanting the walk to clear his head before dinner. Now he just wanted distance. His phone buzzed. Unknown number. A photo loading slowly on the screen. Taeyang and Hanul at school, clearly photographed from outside the fence. Both boys laughing, completely unaware they were being watched. The message beneath made his hands shake. Beautiful children. It would be a shame if anything disrupted their peaceful little lives. Yejun stopped walking, stared at the photo. At his son's faces captured without permission, their privacy violated again, their safety threatened in a message that was crystal clear. Behind him, the restaurant door opened. Seojun and Minho emerged, probably coming after him, probably ready to make more promises they might not be able to keep. Yejun looked at the photo again, then at his phone's contact list where Seojun's name sat with a call button beneath it. He could run, take the boys and disappear again, build a new life somewhere Vivian's reach couldn't find them, or he could trust. Let Seojun and Minho help him fight, risk believing that together they were stronger than apart. His finger hovered over Seojun's contact. The twins were close now, he could hear their footsteps. The choice was his. The screen faded to black. The end. If Yejun's courage moved you, if the twins' fight for redemption broke your heart, let me know you're here. Hit like if you felt every painful choice. Subscribe for more stories where second chances are earned, not given. Comment, would you have trusted them again? Your support means everything. Thank you for feeling this with me.